Hello there, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, no matter where you're calling from. It's great to see you in today's session. My name's Mike. I'm one of the co-founders here at Waybook, and I'm seeing lots of familiar faces, lots of familiar names coming in today's session. If this is not your first Waybook Masterclass, welcome back. It is great to see you again. And if this is your first Waybook Masterclass, then welcome. We are rolling out this Waybook Masterclass series to basically give you a more in-depth view on how you and your teams can best leverage Waybook to really create your single source of truth. So in today's session, we're going to be running through the fundamentals of how we can boost engagement in your team, and not just about getting people using Waybook as the tool, but actually how we can create a culture of a knowledge sharing and a knowledge sharing centric culture. So there's a few things that we will do throughout today's session, but we do like to keep this as engaged and interactive as possible. So if you are in the chat, please feel free to say hello, perhaps tell us who you are, where you're calling from. We have a couple of other of the amazing Waybook team on today's session as well. So we've got Elle here, who will be able to say hello and answer any thoughts or questions that you've got as we go through the session. And we've also got Diego in the chat as well, who will be able to say hello. Hi, Morgan from Kentucky. Good to see you back again. And without further ado, let's just jump in to the real meat and bones of what we're going to be exploring today. And I'm very excited to talk about this because this concept is actually quite dear to my heart. It's one of the main reasons why we decided to start Waybook itself. And it's really because of we always struggle and have these conversations about productivity. We see this in our business, we see this within our teams. And the quite amazing stat is that on average, US office-based team member spends on average 1.8 hours a day just searching for information, looking for content, asking questions, trying to find out processes and policies and procedures. 1.8 hours a day on average. And if you think about that across your team, it's literally 20% of your work week just disappeared. So what we're aiming to do here is we're basically aiming to make sure that you have answers that are documented, not repeated. So removing that time. We're trying to make sure that your information is seamlessly accessible. So people know that it's easier to ask the Waybook questions rather than it is to ask their team members. And also to make sure that our whole organization can stay aligned without these additional layers of management and managers that basically slow us down as we move forward. And someone who's done this amazingly well, one of our great businesses using Waybook is Alex Fry from Containerport. Alex is the Vice President of Customer Experience, Training and Processes at Containerport Group, which is a brilliant logistics and transportation company. And what Alex has achieved by rolling Waybook out is they've actually achieved a 20 to 30% cost saving. So that is the time that has been saved, but has also translated into cost on their side as well. They use Waybook prolifically for onboarding, and they say they're now onboarding people 30% faster, which has essentially meant that the unique thing that she said about Waybook was it's not just the time savings, it's the culture that has been created where people have an increased sense of pride and ownership about the work that they do, the knowledge that they have, and how that works within their teams and also across the business. Now, because of that, she credits that to be the reason why they've actually achieved a 75% reduction in employee turnover. And if you've had employee turnover in your business, then you'll know all too well how emotionally expensive and just difficult it is to manage that process and replace people. So that is just some great examples of how Alex has used Waybook to address that. Now, the key heart of what we're looking at here is she's achieved this by creating this knowledge-centric culture. And what we mean by a knowledge-centric culture is where we're able to capture documents and information as it's created, organize that to be easy access, and ultimately make sure that that is shared as part of a daily workflow. Now, this part of the masterclass, we are looking, or the masterclass series, we are looking at how you can create that culture across the whole organization. So it's not just you building out the Waybook. It's not just your team owners building out the knowledge, the systems, the processes to then delegate down and people just follow blindly. It's about creating this ownership that people have within a knowledge-centric culture to basically make sure that it's everybody's responsibility to keep the knowledge moving within the business. So in order to achieve that, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at how we can first create the essential focus that's necessary for all of our team members to have clarity on the work they do and the information that they need to know. Secondly, we then need to entirely remove the friction between our team members and our people and our knowledge. So removing that friction is essentially removing that time, removing that kind of stress and blockages on people's understanding, and then ultimately freeing up more time for productivity. And then after we've done that, we're going to be looking at how we can empower our contribution. So we believe at every stage of your organization, from the CEO to the brand new intern, it should be everybody's responsibility to contribute to the organization's knowledge. And we're going to look at how we can do that on a per level basis. And then finally, the last thing we're going to cover in today's masterclass is how we can actually drive success within our Waybook on all of these things that we are looking to achieve, as well as confirming that we are delivering the right impact and how we can make sure that Waybook is still being effective and the work that you're doing, the time that you're investing, is essentially the right amount of effort to get that output. So without further ado, let's jump straight into this first point we're looking at, and this is about how we create focus for our team members. Now, when we're talking about focus, we're really talking about when somebody at any stage of the organization enters your knowledge base, right? So obviously we're talking Waybook, but think of this even in real terms. You come into a business, you come into an office, and somebody gives you a folder. And this is the folder of information that you need to know in order to do your effective job. Okay, a folder of information, it's a bit clunky, but we can go through that. We know it all exists. But now imagine if somebody gives you 10 other folders and a stack of papers and a heap of post-it notes and some computer files to look at, and you need to speak to 100 people to get the information. The only result of that is that your team members will be incredibly overwhelmed and chances are miss the critical information that people need. So the key thing about getting focus or knowledge focus for your team members is making sure that we are assigning them what matters, when it matters, and where it matters. So the key ways that we look at this in Waybook, and we'll dive into a Waybook account to look at that specifically, essentially making sure that we're setting up smart access and very clear permissions. Then secondly, to achieve more of that focus, we can focus on, I've said focus a lot here, we can really add in various different due dates to make sure that we have precision timing so people know what information they need to know when they need to know it. So let me just take those 2 points and I'm going to jump into my Waybook account and I'm going to give you a little click around in terms of how you can achieve that focus by setting your permissions and setting your due dates. Now, the big caveat here is today we are talking about increasing the engagement of your team. We do have a separate part of the masterclass series that will be focusing on permission, so I'm not going to go in too much depth there. So I am the admin of this account, which basically means I can see all of the content and all of the information. If I expand this out, this is literally all of the content across the business. And it's fair to say that if I added somebody into this that perhaps just focuses on a social media marketing role, they're going to be overwhelmed. They're going to have too much information and perhaps not know where to go. So in Waybook, we recommend that you do a 1+2 based model when it comes to the content you're sharing. Now, 1 is essentially asking yourself the question, what does this individual, this role need to know in order to be an amazing employee and do their best work, be fully equipped? So in this scenario, that might be the welcome documents, that might be the policies, and it might be something around, well, that's basically it for them to be an employee. Now, how do we get them to be really effective in the work that they do? Well, that's pretty much the marketing handbook. So they only need the marketing handbook. So that's your one. That's the core knowledge that you want them to be totally focused on. Now, the second thing that we can do is the plus two. Now, the concept of plus two is essentially adding one piece of context to the right, one piece of context to the left. And this is essentially the closest information to their role that adds the relevance and context to how the business operates and what they do. So for a marketing role, for example, we probably would want them to have access to some of the sales handbook so they know what happens to the leads that they're bringing in. And we probably also want them to know a little bit about the company messaging or perhaps the customer support, because that's where our customers are perpetuating and doing the conversation, or businesses having the conversations with our customers that they might contribute to from a marketing perspective. So that's the concept. How do we build this? If we head into our organization and run down into groups, what we can essentially do is we can add a new group, and let's say we're creating our marketing team. Now, with the marketing team, we can now add in one individual member or multiple members, but let's set up the permissions to get that focus first. So as we come into here, I'm going to look at the group content, and I'm now going to decide what I want them to have access to. So I want them to be able to see all of the welcome documents. So I'm going to turn that on, and they're going to be required to complete that document. I'm also going to give them access to the sales handbook. I'm going to give them access to the marketing handbook, and I'm going to give them access to the customer support handbook. And as I mentioned before, the HR policies as well. So here we have now fully customized the information that they see. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will know that I've done a difference between requiring completion or reading. And this is a very big difference in terms of what that experience is like for an individual user. So if I head back here into the reader view of this Waybook, I'm going to open up on this document and show you what it looks like if a document has required completion on. If a document requires completion, it basically means that that user has to stay up to date and has to stay abreast of all of the changes that have been made. The difference is, if I look in the left-hand side, it will show a circle, an empty circle with a 0%. And as a user, I will then be notified, reminded, pushed from the dashboard to actually complete this document. So I'll go through, I'll mark as complete, I'll track my progress, and that will actually contribute to a percentage score of the document, and ultimately contribute to my overall percentage. So looking back at the group, we absolutely need them to look at the welcome docs, the marketing handbook, and the HR policies. But what happens when we have a document that someone has access to, but they don't have required completion? So this essentially becomes what we call a reference document. And if I look into this document here, we can see that this expense filling SOP, it doesn't have that circle. And that's because the group I'm in has my access, but it doesn't have requiring completion, which basically means that it is reference. It won't prompt me to complete it. It won't contribute as part of my progress tracking. It won't remind me if I've not completed it. And yes, I can still click through and I get that same great Waybook experience, but it's really there for my reference, for additional reading, for the search, or if I'm using Waybook Ask. So that's a key distinction about achieving that focus. The other key thing is, if you wanted to dive deeper into what do you want me to be able to control within that, let's look at the marketing handbook, and we can see all of the documents within that subject, and I can do a custom override on any one of that piece of document. So we mentioned there that this is a new social media manager. So I'm going to go to this document, and I'm actually going to give them the ability to publish that document. So edit is the ability to make changes and push it for somebody else to review. And publish is the ability for me to actually make that published change and disseminate that out to the team. So without going too deep into the additional parts of our permissions masterclass session, which will be coming very soon, that is the fundamentals of how you can achieve focus from a left-hand navigation perspective for your team. Now, the final thing we'll look at from this perspective is, of course, due dates. Due dates will override the order that basically we see on the left-hand side. Right now, any document that requires completion will be on that individual user's dashboard. It will be at the top, dependent on the order on the left-hand side. But if I have a new document that I really need our users to see, so let's say, for example, we'll go to that new type of filing expenses within SOP expense. If I go into the edit mode of that and I go into the settings, I can head down to the due date of that document and I can set two different types of due date. One of them is a specific due date. So if I want somebody to be able to confirm that they have seen this and complete that document by, let's say, the 1st of July, I can set that, and anybody who has required completion on that document will now have a due date activated, which means if they've not completed it, it would now be in the list of order that needs to be completed. The email reminders would remind them of what's coming up that week, what needs to be done, and the whole system would just make sure that everybody has seen that policy, procedure, or piece of information by that relevant time. That's a specific date. If we wanted to set a relative due date, this is basically something that will just continue to optimize your account for all of your future members moving forward. Because a relative due date is basically relative to when that individual reader has access to that document. So here we can say, right, I actually want somebody to have, by the first 10 days after they get access to this, they have to have completed it. So that means that we can continue with the rest of our permissions and the due date will be active and different for everybody, but based on when they joined your Waybook and got access to that document. Now, the final way of setting deadlines, and this actually is the most common way, is using your learning paths. So we do have a separate class and session on setting your learning paths, but ultimately what we're doing here is creating a customized route of individual documents through your content to customize for a particular team, a group, or an individual. So here we've got the sales onboarding, and we've set the documents that they need to go through. Now, if we enable those deadlines, we will then have a relative deadline on each of those documents, but relative to that flow. So this is the perfect way of setting something up once. And it basically means whenever a new salesperson comes in, gets added to your sales group, which is connected to your sales pathway, your learning path, then it means that we want you to go through this document in your first day, and perhaps these documents in your third day. So that's really something that you set up once and has a massive, massive impact on how your user experiences Waybook. So heading back into this as a summary, this is really the two fundamental ways that we achieve focus for your team members, setting the right permissions for what they need to know and adding due dates either on a document or from a learning path. Now, the second the second thing to think about here is when we're creating our culture, our knowledge-centric culture, we want to introduce Waybook as being the central part of that. A key thing about a knowledge-centric culture is everybody knowing what to look at, when to look, and where to look. So when we're rolling Waybook out, if you've not done that already, you really want to think about how you can introduce this to your team members, not as another piece of software for them to have to log into, but actually as the tools that they need to have all of the knowledge, the information. So if you ever needed support with this, please do contact your account manager, because we have lots of templates of how you can use emails or introduction sessions to get your team more excited about Waybook. Because the reality is here, yes, we're centralizing the knowledge for the business to be more efficient and kind of create that single source of truth. But the people that feel that on a day-to-day basis are our teams. Nobody wants to spend 1.8 hours a day searching for information, asking people questions. So sharing some of these examples and use cases to your teams actually really gets people excited about what they can achieve now they're fully empowered with your single source of truth. If you do already have Waybook rolled out in your organization, then we can think about launch comms as when we're getting somebody new into the business. So making sure that, yes, we're adding them into Waybook, and Waybook will take care of the rest, the onboarding, the training, the learning, everything you need. But make sure you do signpost to your team members that Waybook is the place for them to go to ask questions, to perform AI searches and chats, and of course, complete their onboarding. Now, the final thing that we focus on in order to create focus is the notifications. The notification center in Waybook exists within your dashboard and also behind the little bell icon within your Waybook, but it also powers all of the email or the push app notifications as well. The system will really run on the due dates, the timings, the access that is relevant to that individual user. And you can trust in the fact that that user is being told and updated of the information that they need to know when that is changing or when they need to do that activity. So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of that first section on how we create focus within our Waybook. Next up, we're going to be moving on to how we can remove the friction between our team members and their knowledge. But if you do have any thoughts or questions, please do put them in the chat and I will keep my eyes and ears open so I can make this as interactive as possible. So, removing friction between our team members and knowledge, and your knowledge, it really is something that is dear to our heart. It's something that we focus on a lot because we believe that it needs to be easier for your team members to ask Waybook or self-solve their questions, their problems, their uncertainties than it is for them to ask you. That is the aim that we're doing. And the truth is, it's not about bringing your team closer to the knowledge, forcing them to sign into Waybook, forcing them to ask the questions. It's actually about taking the knowledge to where your team is. Now, many of our businesses will operate on your internal chat system, whether that be Teams or Slack or many of the other tools around. And Waybook fully integrates with both Teams and Slack. So let's just have a quick look at how that can work if you're a business running on Microsoft Teams. So you can just see here as a bit of an example that this here is the Waybook view that we know and love within your Teams app. So if you don't already have that downloaded, head over to Teams, download the Waybook app, and you can just have the Waybook icon on everybody's team so they can instantly get access to it without even leaving their conversation. Now, the second thing that I absolutely love is the in-app chat system that you have within Teams. So if somebody was to ask me a question on Teams, perhaps it could be, where are the brand colors? What do I do? What are the fonts? They will ask me that question. As we can see here on my screen, I can literally just hit the Waybook icon, perform a search. It will show me those documents and I can just send that directly in line, again, without even looking at Waybook, without even navigating it away from that chat. Now, if you're not in Microsoft Teams and you're in Slack, it basically works in exactly the same way. So someone here might ask me a question. I can slash Waybook and perform any type of search. It will show me that search within my chat and I choose what document will then automatically send to that user. So this is part of removing that friction. And we've also seen that a lot of people will use this as a way of just sharing information, even if it's not a response to the question. Now, the other way to remove that friction between your team members, really making sure that your knowledge is less than a click away if possible, or one fast, focused and confident click, is by making sure that your team are aware of the bookmarks within Waybook, that your team are utilizing the browser extensions, and finally, consider whether or not you might want to use a link book to give a real holistic direction of everywhere that your team needs to go. So in order to share what that actually looks like and to help it make a little bit more sense, let me jump back into this Waybook document. So if I head over into any of my documents, let's say this team and structure, I have the ability to turn this bookmark document on. And on any of these documents, if I hit this bookmark, that will amend it for me as an individual user. So if I find a piece of information that I need to keep on coming back to, perhaps a procedure that I'm continually following, how do I keep on adding someone to the CRM? I need to keep on looking at this, a video I watch regularly, snippets that you have in your content. You turn that on, and now your team can get access to their individual bookmarks in multiple ways. Firstly, if I'm on the dashboard, I have a full dashboard widget, which is literally just the bookmarks. So I can prioritize what I come to most regularly and instantly click into that and get into that piece of information. But if you have multiple documents that you need to flick between, then you can actually do a filtered view on your left-hand navigation here. So if I kind of expand all of this out and I'm trying to find those documents and it's a bit long, I can actually just hit on the bookmark documents and it will only show me the documents that have been bookmarked by me for me within my Waybook account. So that's a really valuable tool that's worth making sure that your team members know, and of course for you to make sure that you can get quick access to the information you need. Now, the second thing that we recommend is making sure that your team all download the browser extension. Because yes, it's very easy to jump into your Waybook, but if you're in another place, if you're on another website, if you're in your emails, you're doing something and you just need that quick access, you're not near your Slack, you're not near your team, you don't want to load another browser, you just hit on the Waybook browser extension and you can literally just search for anything. So I can say expenses SOP or whatever that may be. And performing that search will just take me directly to that search results page within the Waybook as you connect. Now, the final thing is you have the option of also using a slightly different tool that we have called Linkbook. So one thing that we've noticed a lot of people do that works incredibly well is their organization will set the Waybook dashboard as their homepage every time they open a new browser. So that basically means people are always brought back to the information, always brought back to the SOPs, always brought back to the Bible for the business. However, if you think, yes, I do want people to see Waybook, but I also need people to have quick access to our HubSpot and quick access to our Salesforce and quick access to a few other tools, piece of information and locations, then you can use the link book. So this here is basically a book of links that you can have password protected for your site. And ultimately, you can set up very easy navigatable links, one of which can, of course, be your Waybook dashboard. People can search through their links, and you have the choice of the tools or whatever that may be. You have the choice of making this private to your organization or actually public to everybody if you wanted to share this with external stakeholders. This is another tool that we see really great Waybook teams setting as the default loading page of your browsers. So people don't have to keep on clicking around and remembering what to do and look at bookmarks. You're always where you need to be and you're one click away from any tool, any access or any information that you need. If you wanted to use that, you can head on over to linkbook.waybook.com and be able to easily create your free Linkbook account, which will connect with your Waybook account. But even if you're not on Waybook, you can use a Linkbook as well. So that takes us to the end of removing the friction from a browser-based perspective. But of course, we're not always on the in the same location and on the same page. So if you wanted to utilize Waybook for mobile, then you can use the native mobile iOS and Android devices. So here you can get all of your guides, your SOPs, your how-to, your training, whatever you need anytime, which is really useful for businesses with frontline teams, field workers, or where you just have a hybrid setup. I'll sometimes search for something on my phone, even if I'm at my laptop, even if I'm just looking for a little bit of a break. So this is available on both iOS and Android, and you can download it in the Android and also the Apple Store as well. So that takes us to the end of removing the friction. And if you have any other thoughts or questions, please do let us know. So I'm just looking now. Morgan's got a question in the chat. You searched for the Waybook extension and found 3 separate extensions, which all seem to do different and useful things. Could we quickly go over the extensions and what each one does? That is a great question, Morgan. And yeah, let me just jump into that right now. So you have 3 extensions. One of them is the Waybook Search. Waybook Search is the one I've just mentioned. The other one is Waybook Record, which is our version of essentially a browser recorder. So you can record screens, you talking, clicking, showing what you're doing, and export that as a video. And the other one is Waybook Shots. And Shots is the SOP capture tool that basically means that you can be in any system on any browser and say, let me just show you how to change your profile picture. So you click here, you click here, you click here, you jump into that. And what Waybook will do is it will actually screenshot what you're doing, highlight what you're clicking, creating titles, and then you can just turn that into an SOP, which you can then just import or embed into your Waybook and just share with the rest of the team. So they're your 3 browser extensions that you can jump into right now from the Chrome store. Okay, so let me jump straight back into this session here. So the third thing that we're focused on now is the crucial part about empowering our team. So if you think that we have now focused everyone's attention on the knowledge they need, we've directed their path, we've removed the friction between them and the knowledge, now we have the time, we have the space, we have the energy to empower our team to contribute and have ownership over our organizational culture of knowledge. So if we think about our team's contributions into this triangle of 4 different tiers, we want people to feedback, we want people to contribute, we want people to own, and we want people to champion. Now, of course, not everybody can own parts of the Waybook or run the full championship of Waybook, but what we do in order to achieve that knowledge-centric culture is that we intentionally decide and build who can contribute in what different ways. So firstly, from a feedback perspective, we want everybody to share feedback. We want everybody to share their insights to improve on these documents and move forward. Secondly, we want people to be able to contribute. So this is not everyone, but sometimes we want our operators to bring their specific knowledge of what they're doing and how they can do it better as part of their role. Next up, we want the owners of the core document. So these might be the managers of areas to really focus on how they can optimize and improve the content. And then finally, we have the champions. So this is a committee of people, a small group of people who own the structure, the utilization, the reports, the templates, the standards. Let's jump into each one of them and we can share these simple roles that we would recommend signposting and encouraging your team to get involved in. So number one, looking at how we get people contributing from a feedback perspective. So this culture starts with this initial conversation. So really we want to make it as easy as possible to engage with that content. So on Waybook, anybody can provide feedback on any of those documents. Now, also, that is direct feedback on a specific document, but we can also look at what people are asking for, what people are searching for. And the key thing is that if we are as responsive as possible to this, that's where we can really get a massive amount of engagement on our Waybook account. So if I jump into this Waybook again, I'll jump back into any one of those documents, and you can see here that as well as seeing my status, I can provide feedback. So encourage your team members, whoever they are, to give feedback on that document. I can say, look, this is excellent, really useful, but I'd like to know more about vision. So they can provide this feedback. The document owners will now get notified, and that will be visible within the comments and activity tab. So only to the people who have edit access of that document. Now, being able to get people to provide feedback is one thing, but being responsive to that feedback is your responsibility and something that we can do incredibly well. So now we can talk about this as an editing team. We can consider this. And of course, if we make changes to our documents or make clarifications, and any change that we make, we publish back to our team, the feedback loop and people noticing that their feedback is having a contribution or a clarifying effect is a huge value add and a massive boost for our teams. So not only will they now get a notification to say the document's been updated, it's a great way to actually identify those gaps and close in on the information. Now, in addition to getting the direct feedback, as I mentioned, we can look at all of the different insights that we have, specifically looking at the search and ask insights. So in here, we can actually see what are people searching for. And crucially, we can have a quick look at over the last month, what searches have had no results. So if someone is searching for something and there's no results in there, it looks like we actually don't have any information on PTO, for example, or we don't have any information on Avatar or Manchego, which is perhaps something that we don't want to put within our Waybook, but it really gives us the knowledge gaps within our business. Now, if we scroll down here, we can also look at the ask data. So we can see what are people asking for, how are they having those conversations, how many times are they interacting with it, and how are they rating those conversations as well. If you have good or poor conversation ratings, again, you as the knowledge owner can then basically be responsive to that to optimize your content and move forward. So the key thing here is make sure that your team members know how to interact, which is the feedback, and also doing the thumbs up or thumbs down rating on any answers or searches. And then the second piece is you being responsive to that, maybe reaching out to them and thanking them or clarifying directly, even if you're not changing the content within your Waybook. So that is the base layer. This is how we create the foundational layer of people giving feedback to your knowledge. The next layer we have here is essentially how we can boost contribution. So not just feedback, but contribution to our documents. And the way we've seen this done excellently well is where businesses will link the contribution to that individual's business goals and performance metrics. So the knowledge should really move the business forward and not just sit in the background. So if we think about, we've got a set of documents on our SharePoint somewhere and we've not looked at it, no, we want that to be at the forefront. We want to make sure it stays up to date. And the real trick here is as soon as we can get people thinking about how we run the business rather than just executing on the task, that is where you really unlock the ability for people to say, yeah, do you know what? Taking a step back from that, I don't know why we do things in this particular way. I don't know why in our sales follow-ups, we lead that to somebody else and then we create a ticket over here and we add this person in. Why don't we streamline this operation? Or why don't we change what we do? And being able to look on the business rather than be stuck in the business is really core to being able to contribute. Now, what we've seen work excellently well here, and this is the next level of that, is some Waybook businesses will actually tie a KPI to an individual to say every week, everybody needs to make a suggested edit to a document that they own. Now, if you think about what that is, it doesn't mean you should change the process. It just means that you can optimize the sharing of that content. So perhaps you swap a video for an image, or perhaps you put in a screen recording. Not only does that strengthen the knowledge, so it's easier to share and easier for other people to understand, but it's a really great way of people actually looking at how the information is shared. And sometimes you can even then reflect more on what that information is. Sometimes it's hard to assess the work that we do and be critical of our own work.
Hey, baby, you're pretty good. Who's 6 months old? You? You?
At your creator insights. So if I jump back into this Waybook account, I can then have a look at this, head back into the reporting, go to creator insights, and this is everybody who has edit access to your Waybook. Now here, we're able to see whether people are being creative and contributing. So we can see the documents that they've changed recently. We can see the documents that are currently in review or approval, how many documents they own, how many of those documents are published. And this just gives you a real quick snapshot about what is happening from a content creation and contribution standpoint and where that is moving forward. So that is your second part of this triangle, really building up in the pyramid of having the feedback, empowering your teams to contribute, even if that's just suggested edits within that. Now, the key thing that you'll need to be using within your Waybook account is actually making sure that people have the access to firstly edit that document from the permissions perspective. And then when they're in there, they can move into edit, make any of these changes. And then instead of publishing, because they won't be able to do that, they can actually request that as a review. So quite often every week, someone will request a review for additional to a team lead or somebody else, and then that will put that document in the review state, and that's their contribution for that week or perhaps that month. So now let's move on to the next part of this pyramid, and that's really where we look at ownership. Now, when we're looking at ownership of the content, that's obviously not relevant for absolutely everybody, hence it being a smaller part of the pyramid. But really, our knowledge system becomes really valuable when it stays current, up to date, and has trust within that system. So in order to do that, we want to build up a bit of a rhythm of how we optimize that content, how we review that content. And in order to do that, we need to be very specific and clear with who owns what pieces of information within the Waybook, who is responsible for that policy or that individual procedure. Now, we can do this in multiple ways, both document owners, verification, and once again, using those content insights. And let me just jump back into this Waybook account to show you those two things in action. So firstly, if I look at any document, I'm able to see on the information tab as a reader who those document owners are. So here is myself and it's also L. Now, as a reader, if I need to ask any additional thoughts or questions, and I know who that's signposted at and where that's from. Now, in order to set that document owner, that is achieved within settings, into owners and verifiers, and you can just add actually as many owners as you want. Now, the second thing that you can do within this is whilst those owners will have all of that information coming in, the feedback, the reviews, the contributions, and they'll be notified on the documents they own, you can also set a verifier who is accountable for that information. So this is someone who will have to just verify any change. So a publish can still be made, but you'll see here that I will now mark that as verified to just say, yep, I'm happy with that. That document is up to date. Every time there is a new publish on that document, the document will become unverified. I will get a notification and I can then come back in and say, yeah, I'm still happy with that. Now, the final thing that we say in order to create a really strong rhythm here is perhaps create a verification schedule dependent on the document where, okay, do you know what? We just want to look at that every 3 months. So on the 1st of July, that will now become unverified. I will then be able to get notified and then I can jump back in and just make sure that that document is still up to date. So this level of ownership is obviously relevant for the people who are responsible and accountable for the information that you're sharing on an individual document. But that takes us to the final level of the pyramid. And this is really the people who are responsible for championing the whole Waybook, so owning the whole Waybook within the organization. And where we've seen this work and really effectively across Waybook teams is creating a small or perhaps even larger committee that is focused on crafting this knowledge-centric culture and owning the Waybook internally. So what we've seen work really well here is where you have a core group of people that is typically across department and sometimes from operations or HR. And these are the people that are responsible for the overarching structure of the Waybook. They're responsible for the standards of what good looks like within a document, perhaps the permission structure, the setups, the integrations, things like that. Now, what you would typically do is within the committee, you can assign responsibilities that might look after the templates, or perhaps the goals and the permissions, or perhaps the whole structure and the navigation tree. Now, having the committee basically means that we've got that long-term consistency and really make sure that there is a level of responsibility and just that regular cadence that we occasionally check in, take the time to review the reports, take the time to look at the messaging, take the time to perhaps ask the Waybook team something or an audit on your account to see how we could suggest you can actually get more out of your Waybook account and your single source of truth. So this is essentially the pyramid that we recommend to make sure that you can turn everybody in your organization to become part of a knowledge-centric culture. Because once we have people contributing to the knowledge of the organization continues to become the biggest asset of the business. Finally, we're moving on to our fourth section here, and this is about how we can drive success with our insights. So essentially, if you have now created focus for your team, you've really removed the friction for them and their knowledge, you've engaged everyone in an appropriate way, how do you know if it's working? What actually do we need to see to make sure that this is working? Well, hopefully all of those questions are already answered within Waybook. We've seen the search insights. We typically see that question rate would go up initially where people are trying to answer their questions. And then because the knowledge transfer is more effective, we would tend to see less questions over time. The second thing that I highly recommend is the progress matrix, which gives you a snapshot view of everyone in the organization and the knowledge they have access to. And we can also look at the report builder to dive deep into the different insights that we might need, no matter what question you have. So the key thing here is that we want to measure, we want to learn, and we want to iterate to improve both the knowledge we have and the impact it's having on our organization. Now, before we come to questions, I'll just take over the screen once again and just show you those two things. So we've looked at the search insights. Let's have a quick look at the progress matrix. So whether you are owning the whole Waybook or perhaps you're just your department, you're able to jump into here, have a look at an individual team, And based on that team, we can just have a scan across with what content they do or don't have access to. And based on that, we can see what their completion rate is, if it's reference only, how far they are from it, if they don't have access to that document. And this is a really great way for us to just see in a one holistic view where the knowledge sits. So we're in the HR training section here, and we can see the different types of subjects and, of course, the individual documents. And I love this view that we can actually then also export it and share that with the team if that is appropriate. Now, the final thing is if you've got any other questions and you're trying to find some insight on how the content is created, where members sit, but on a specific piece of information, you can do that with Waybook Report Builder. So here we can decide whether we want to look at subjects, documents, learning paths, members, a specific test. And based on that, we can choose an individual document, break that down by perhaps the members or the tests, and we can really see who does and doesn't have that completed, when they last viewed it, how many times they viewed it. And if you wanted, you could also just reset that progress that would then notify that member that they then need to reconnect that document as well. So that brings us to the end of today's session. So I'd like to encourage anybody in today to kind of ask any other thoughts or questions that you might have. Now, whilst we're looking at that, and I know Elle's been busy in the chat answering some questions as we've gone through, so thank you very much for your questions and also for answering those, Elle. I'm just going to do a very quick recap of what we've covered today. Firstly, we recommend that you should create clarity and focus for every team member on the knowledge they should know and the information and context they deserve. We should remove that friction between our people and our knowledge, and then we should empower everyone to contribute in the most meaningful way for them possible. Finally, we want to make sure that we're driving that success and also delivering that impact. Sorry, I'm just seeing we've got an audio issue, but I don't know if you can see that, if that's now. Thanks for that, Robert. But I think we're okay. And okay, I think we're okay now. I can see my microphone bobbling up. So if you can hear me, if I can have a thumbs up from anyone, perhaps Al or someone give me a thumbs up. Perfect. Okay, thanks. So sorry, Robert, if that's the case, we will get this recording sent out to everybody as well. If there was a piece that you thought that you missed from the screen, then do let us know, and I can circle back on that now. But basically, we recommend you create that focus, remove that friction, empower the team to contribute, and drive that success to impact. Now, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, this is great, I get the concept, I want to go in, where do I start? What we recommend is that start by nominating your knowledge champion. So who do you think in your team should be part of building your Waybook? So who should lead on the structure and the team and build that momentum? If they know nothing about Waybook, that's absolutely fine. Bring them in, ask if they want to contribute, and then just book a team with a call, book a call with a team, or send any of our pre-recorded material, and we're more than happy to bring them up to become the Waybook experts as well. We recommend that you schedule those monthly reviews to make sure that your content is accurate. Look at the search insights that you're getting, look at the feedback you're getting on the documents. And then any of those contributions, celebrate those contributions. We really want to encourage people to contribute and, of course, feedback on that document. And then if you're restructuring or you're considering how we really bring this to be a core part of the business, try and connect the celebration of your knowledge-centric culture to the goals of the organization. So what does an individual need to do in order to contribute to that positively? And then, of course, where possible, get all of those threads into Waybook across your team, the browser extension, the mobile app, the Teams or the Slack extension, anything that basically means that you can remove that friction. And we will get a list of everything as a quick link that you can then click onto and get that set up. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your thoughts and your questions and contributions today. It's really great to see so many of you on our masterclass series. We will continue to roll out this. We have 8 masterclasses within the series, and then we'll publish all of them together moving forward. as I'm logging off here, I can see Lisa's raised your hand. So Lisa, please feel free to put your question in the chat or in the Q&A. Hello. Elle put her hand up as well. Okay, Lisa's hand's gone down, but that's fine. So if you do have any other thoughts or questions that you didn't have a chance to do that today, please feel free to message into support or to your account manager, and we're always happy to get back to you with any other thoughts, questions, or of course, jumps on any other calls. So thank you so much for your time and attention. We look forward to seeing you next week at our next masterclass. And until then, have an amazing one, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care now.